Have you ever told a joke to a friend of yours and he laughed his head off? Or have you ever been with a circle of friends and they say, "Hey, can you tell that story?" And you tell that story and it's just awesome. Well, think about this. What if you had to step on stage and tell that particular story to a group of people? And only if they laugh would you get paid for that funny story. Well, today in the Pro Talk podcast, we get to talk to a stand up comedian. That's right. It's going to be fun and we're going to learn a few things too. But before we meet him, make sure you push the subscription button as well as the notification bell so you never miss another episode with another amazing professional here in the Pro Talk podcast. Well, today he's a guy that I've known for over 10 years. He's a stand up comedian. I first met him at the Pittsburgh Pirates fantasy camp, and we were teammates. If you've been a teammate of mine, you're like a brother to me. So, without any more talk for me, let's welcome to our little stage here in the Pro Talk podcast, Mr. Johnny C. Johnny, what's up, man?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I do not do podcasts usually because people ask me to come on comedy podcasts and then they want me to do jokes and do my material. I'd rather do that on stage. But I said yes to your podcast, not only because you're a good guy and a good friend, but because I believe in what you're doing. I've watched the last couple episodes that you've done. And I think this isn't really about me being funny tonight, although, I'll try to be a little bit, but it's about bigger things. It's about getting to where you want to be in life. It's so good to see you. Where are you, by the way? You look like you're in some sort of back room at a strip club. I see neon lights in the back. What is going on there?
That's exactly what I was going for with the neon lights. I have to get onto the decorating committee. Actually, it's a little spare bedroom here in the little studio we've made, with the lighting and stuff. I've had some issues with too much glare when we've done this in the afternoon. It's amazing with the technology and stuff, what you can use to create a so-called home studio. But yeah, maybe I'll get better lights for you next time. Maybe they'll flash and
I
have
just want
your
to make
name
sure
below.
you're okay, that you're not in any type of danger.
Yeah. That's a new one. So, all right, the funny man started already. Let me ask you this. In doing research, and I know some of your background, what is a bigger rush for you? Hitting a walk-off base hit at any level or getting a laugh from an audience?
Oh man. So I'm lucky that I played in the Pittsburgh Pirates fantasy camp for the last 10. Next year will be my 10th season. I missed a year. There were a couple years that were canceled due to COVID. So I've been in the fantasy camp with the Pittsburgh Pirates for over 10 years, but it was going to be a one-time thing. It was on my dad's bucket list. He wanted to do it, and then he did it one year, and then he was like, I want to do it one year with my two sons, me and my brother. And here we are 10 years later. I did get a walk-off hit. It was in the championship game 2 years ago at the Pittsburgh Pirates fantasy camp. And it was my dad's last year of playing in the year that he went into the Hall of Fame. And he was on deck, and it was a walk-off in the bottom of the last inning. And if I didn't get that hit, then it was going to be up to him. So I wanted him to walk off a winner, so I got the hit. So that was one of the greatest moments in my personal life. But since that box has been checked, there's no greater thrill for a stand-up comedian to get a laugh on a brand new joke that you're telling for the first time. That is so rare. And when it happens, you're like, I just struck gold because I know that this is going to be in my act for a long time. So that's my greatest thrill right now. Something happening in my everyday life, and I somehow make it into a funny joke or a one-liner or a bit. And when you tell something on stage for the first time, your timing's off, your delivery's off. But when you get that laugh, then you're like, this is going to be great. So they're
Nice.
both great. I would have to say my that personal base hit probably means more, but they're both great.
Well, you mentioned that, and I should have said that I was a teammate with you, your brother Aaron, and your dad. I guess that was 2016. Well, it was because I remember our team won at the 17, and we were not teammates. But yeah, and I think it was 2008. My brother and I originally sent my dad to, I think it was 1993, one of the first camps, and then my dad repaid us, and then 2008. The three of us went. I'll never forget the day I was at shortstop. And I looked to my right, my brother's playing third base. And about that time, I got a ground ball and I picked it up. And all this was going through my head. And I was taking my time throwing it to first. Who was playing first? My dad. I thought, this is freaking ridiculous. This is so surreal. I'm wearing pirate uniforms. And there's my brother and my dad. It's just, then unless you're there with your father and son, and how many of us have been so lucky to do that?
Yeah, especially because we're doing this in our advanced stages in life, and you can't take that for granted. We're playing a kid's game. Like my dad and I have had a good relationship, but we don't sit down and talk about our feelings. We talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates. So to be
Yeah.
we had a moment very early on where we were all in the outfield at the same time. I was in left, my brother Aaron was in center, and my dad was playing right. And I was like, this is not the Bonds, Bonilla, Van Slyke of the
Close.
early 1990s. I was like, that's who gets to play in an actual game on a
Yeah.
major league field with your dad? And then there was that same camp. There must have been a walk around or something, but we were all on base at the same time. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Aaron and I are going to play one more year next year. It'll be our 10th season. We're going to go into the Hall of
HOA.
Fame, which happens when you play 10 years, and we'll be the first family in the Pittsburgh Pirates fantasy camp history to have three members in the Hall of Fame.
That's
So
awesome.
uh, that's going to be a big family reunion actually coming up this year. It'll be in December of this year. So looking forward to that. Gives me an incentive to still go to the batting cage every now and then so I don't embarrass myself.
That's great, man. That's awesome. Proud of you guys. So walking on stage the first time, is that the scariest thing you've ever done in your life?
Not the scariest. So I wanted to be I wanted to be a stand-up comedian probably my whole entire life. I was a stand-up comedy groupie. I grew up watching stand-up. I really enjoyed it. I'd go to the comedy clubs. I knew all the comedians, and I just had the stage fright. People told me I was funny. People are like, "You should do this. You should do this." Um, and I always came up with a different excuse not to. And then you get caught up in life. Corporate job, and then I got married, and we had a child in the home, and life gets away from you, so I can't go run out to a bar to do an open mic. But 10 years ago, I had a change in my life, and I went through a divorce, and then it sat me down, and I wanted to question what the next chapter of my life was going to be, and I wanted the next chapter of my life to be no regrets. So I wrote down a list of things that I wanted to do, like bucket list things. And I wrote stand up comedy on there. And one night I was at a comedy club, and I was sitting at the bar by myself watching the show, and everyone's laughing. And I was like, man, how cool would it be to be up on stage getting that type of reaction? Not just for me, but the joy is to see other people laughing. And so I saw a flyer for an open mic, and I was like, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can. And I had just gotten back from a friend of mine's for a birthday celebration, and they asked me to give a toast. And I did like a 2 or 3 minute toast. It was basically just a riff off the cuff, and people were laughing. And I got like an adrenaline rush from that. And so I was like, maybe I can do this. And uh, I made a terrible I went to a comedy club, a very well known comedy club, Off the Hook Comedy Club in Naples, Florida. I'm up on the big stage, and I'm getting ready to do my first open mic, and I made the worst decision of my life. I decided to post about it on Facebook. I went Facebook Live.
No.
So I had my phone recording me going up, and it was painful. I did not get any laughs. I had no like real material. I was talking about stuff I don't even know what I was talking about. And it's so funny because I host open mics now, so I see this out of everyone, their first time up there. And I was like, man, this is so hard. And I was getting chuckles, but you think you're going to get these laughs, and I'm just standing up there, and that 5 minutes felt like an hour and a half. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, I got so many people, my friends and family, watching this
Watching.
streaming on Facebook right now. And I've never watched it until a couple months ago. Uh, it came up on a Facebook memory, and I watched it. It was so painful. I mean, just so painful. You don't have your timing, you don't have delivery, you don't have material. But the moral of that story, and this is why I like hosting open mics, because I like to pass this along. When I walked off that stage, I was distraught. I was like, I was 45 years old. I was like, I wanted to do this my whole entire life, and I'm not good at it. But the host, the guy who had been, a professional comedian for a long time, came up to me and said, "Good job." And I said, "What are you talking about? That was terrible." He goes, "No, that was your first time. Come back in 2 weeks, do the same thing again. It'll be so much better." And I came back 2 weeks later and I did it again, and it was better. And then it just kept getting better and better and better. And then your confidence builds. You don't realize how much anything in life is about confidence. If you don't believe that you're good at it, why is anyone else going to believe that you're good at it? But that's how it started. It started at, a lifelong dream, going through a bad situation in my life, and then wanting to do it just so I could say that I gave it a shot. And here I am 10 years later. I'm headlining comedy clubs. I'm headlining small theaters. I'm on the Pro Talk podcast. Everything's going well.
Oh, thank you again, John. Well, I love the courage and the resilience, and I followed your story and, watching you through Facebook. And I remember the surfer on acid, the thing about the Coors Light, and I won't get into the punchline, all that, but I've watched you and I'm like, well, he's here now. He's here now. And it's inspiring to me because if you've ever had to speak about anything, even if you're an expert on something, 5 minutes does feel like you said, an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's funny now because I can do up to an hour,
Nice.
but I remember having a hard time being able to do 5 minutes of material, and then 10, and then 15. And then when you're ready for the clubs is when you have about 15, 20 minutes and really good material. That was just that. I mean, it takes years. It takes years, right? So you mentioned a surfer and acid joke, and that that was a joke that it was actually the first joke that I ever told that got a laugh. It was my fifth open mic, and I was near where you are. I was at the Laughing Skull in Atlanta, Georgia, and I did that joke, and it got a laugh. So the Laughing Skull is a comedy club in Atlanta, Georgia, and they have an open mic like 4 or 5 nights a week. But because it's Atlanta, you never know who might show up at this open mic. So this is my fifth open mic of doing stand up, right? And you send the email, you get on the list, and then you show up and you see if your name's on it. And my name's on it. And I'm going on behind Bobcat Goldthwait. Bobcat Goldthwait from the Police Academy movies back in the
Right.
80s was a huge stand up star back in the 80s, still does stand up to these days. And I'm like, I'm going on behind Bobcat Goldthwait, my fifth open mic. But I did that surfer and acid joke, and that way it's a joke that people remember. It's a quick one liner. It's the only joke that is still in my act today. Although I've taken it from being a one liner, it's now like 2 or 3 minutes. I tell the story behind the joke. But yeah, it's I have like 3 or 4 jokes that people remember, but that's a cool one. I remember where I was, what I was doing when that joke came about, and that was one of the other things that I've been able to work on over the years. So I was like 4 or 5 years into it, and I really wasn't, getting out of the open mic. I just wasn't taking off. And then COVID hit and didn't do it for a couple years. And then I had a chance to really reflect on everything. And I did a total reset and I threw out every single joke I've ever written other than that surfer and acid joke. And I said, when I come back after COVID, I'm going to change my whole entire act. I'm not going to write jokes anymore. I'm going to tell stories about my life. And ever since I've started being talking about my personal life on stage, my relationship issues, good and bad, everything has taken off. So I attribute it to relatability. People know I'm up there talking about things that happen in, everybody's life. And so it's about honesty. And I talk to a lot of newer comedians. The other thing is I started doing this at 45. I'm 54 now. So I'm like 9 years into it. And so I do a lot of open mics at comedy clubs and things. And these are people that are starting, they're starting in their 20s. And it's where I should have started, but I didn't. And there's no regrets about that. But I'm telling them, I was like, hey, listen, you got to find your voice. Like, are you going to be a joke writer? Are you going to be a storyteller? Are you going to be a character? You got to find all these things and just do what feels comfortable to you. You can't go up on stage and be something that you're not.
Well, you mentioned that memorable jokes. I was talking to a friend of mine that I told him a couple hours ago I was going to be talking to you tonight, and I told him about the drugs in the bedroom joke about your wife when
Uh,
you take drugs and it was Ambien. It wasn't anything. Buddy laughed his head off. He goes, "That's hysterical." I said, "Yeah." I said, "This guy's great." Well,
yeah, uh, okay, so I don't have a lot of one-liners, but that's a one-liner. So I'll do the one-liner here.
go
So,
ahead.
and then I'll tell, and it's not a one-liner anymore. It's 4 minutes of my act, and you can find it on YouTube, and we'll plug my YouTube at the end. And it's getting a big reaction, but it's all based on real life experiences, and I've combined a lot of it into the story for a comedic effect. Okay, so I'm going through a divorce, right? You got to remember, comedy comes from through pain. A lot of things come through pain. I'm going through a divorce, and it's a divorce that I really didn't want at the time. But we're still living together, which is awkward. And I was having a hard time sleeping. I was having a hard time sleeping, and walking around in the middle of the night. And my wife at the time was like, "You got to go to the doctor. You got to get on. You're keeping me up all night long." Right. So I went to the doctor. I was like, "Hey, I'm going through a divorce. I can't sleep at night." He gave me a prescription for Ambien. Okay. But how I changed it for comedic effect is my wife. Wait, I got to remember I'm not on stage right now. So I got to remember how do I start this? All right. My wife wanted me to start taking one of those pills to make things better for her in the bedroom. And I said, "Do you want me to take a Viagra?" And she said, "Oh, God, no. Ambien." So that's the joke. But it came through, twisting. She did want me to take a pill to make things
Yeah,
better for her in the bedroom. She wanted to sleep and be away from me. I mean, so that's the joke. But
yeah.
that's how you take something, a painful experience and then turning into something positive. And then, and now it's a whole 4 minute bit. I combined it into something else that happened in our marriage where, just, one night, when you're taking Ambien, you got to realize you got 20 minutes before you're going to zonk out. So make sure you don't take that pill when something else might happen later with you and your wife, or you're going to fall asleep.
Right.
And so that's another thing that happened one night. But yeah, it's funny. Go find it on YouTube. It's my YouTube channel, Johnny C. Comedian, and it's on there. Ambien. It's an Ambien bit.
I thought
But
that was funny.
the moral of the story is you can dwell on negative things that happen in your life, like a divorce or things like that, or process it. You move on, and then you go back to it, and you can turn negatives into a positive in almost anything in your life.
I like that. That's great. So, growing up, you played sports growing up. Did you have any influential coaches or teachers that created some of this? Maybe it was your dad and mom, or how'd you get some of that resiliency?
That's a good question. So I did play baseball growing up, and I went to a private school for my junior and senior year in high school, East Providence, Rhode Island. I went to Providence Country Day. They had a great baseball team, and they had a coach, one of those lifers. been coaching the same high school for 50 years. This guy was more knowledgeable about baseball than anyone I've ever met in my life, Coach Dickerman. And I wasn't that good. I just wasn't. But I loved the game. And so my junior year, I didn't even know if I would make varsity. I was the fifth outfielder. I got 4 at bats the whole entire year. I went 1 for 4. I never got into a game that was less than 10 runs. And I was like, I looked at the roster for the senior year. I was like, there's no way I'm going to make the team. I'm just not. And I told my dad, I was like, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to make the team. And he's like, if you quit, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. So I sat there. And so like, if you don't have, the physical, you got to have the mental. So I sat down and I looked at our roster, and where was the weakness? The weakness was pitching. I've never pitched ever, but I went in the off season and I told the coach, oh, by the way, I'm a pitcher now. I pitch. And he's like, really? And I said, yeah. And so you always need pitching. I threw a 55-mile-an-hour off-speed pitch, obviously. It was so slow, they couldn't hit it. They could not hit. I was a long relief, which meant I got in a lot of games because we weren't that great, but I made the team. So I'm on the team and I'm pitching, out of the bullpen. I did not start one game all year, and I was getting occasional work at DH. My hitting improved a little bit, and it was the last game of the year. We had to beat Barrington, Rhode Island to make the state playoffs. And you go in the morning, you look at the board, and to see the lineup, and I didn't expect to be in the lineup. This is a do or die game. I'm the starting pitcher. I'm like, I did not start one game all year. I walked in, I thought it was a joke. I'm like, you're starting me? He goes, yeah. And I said, why? He goes, they hit really well and you're not that good and they're not going to be able to hit you. Just
Thanks,
throw the
coach.
ball over the plate. I went 5 1/3, never pitched more than 2 innings. I went 5 1/3. I gave up 3 runs. I got the win. We won the game.
Sweet.
And we made the playoffs. And so it's one of those things that I look back on, it wasn't any of my athletic achievements. It was, you got to be smart. You got to be smart and you don't give up. You just don't. I mean, it wouldn't have been so easy to say, I'm not going to make the team. I don't want to go through the embarrassment of being cut. You reinvent yourself. And so it's not always about working harder. It's about working smarter sometimes. So, but it's about being a team player too. There's no way we would have won the game if we didn't have somebody to come in after me. So he knew what he was doing. And so that was probably an amazing thing, because even nowadays, you're in your 50s, you still think about something that happened in high school. And I'm sitting there going, how could he have been that smart? To know that would have worked. I mean, I give him all the credit in the world, but it's been a great memory for me. And it was a great memory. I got taken out in the middle of an inning because I walked a guy in the 6th inning. But I walked off the field and everyone's cheering, and my dad was in the crowd, and I got my first and only high school pitching win in that do or die games.
Yeah.
So when you say coach, that's the first one that comes to mind. The second one is the coach that always wanted to pinch run for me every single time I got on base. And so that's not the negative. That's a negative coach in my mind. But
Well, I guess he said that was the old fantasy camp where designated runner. But how great was that for your dad? I'm sure, knowing your dad, what a wonderful guy he is, for him to say, hey, you'll regret it. You would never had such a great experience. Now, was there
yeah,
a,
yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, you probably see this, in tennis or in sports in general. I mean, you know, it's real easy to give up. It's real easy to say no. You can come up with an excuse not to do something all the time. But is that how you want to go through life? I mean, I'd rather have I'd rather have failures than not have the experience, because you can learn from failure. Quitting does nothing.
Yeah.
It does nothing. So,
Yeah. My dad, if I wouldn't be here talking to you and I wouldn't have had my professional experiences and meeting great people like you, Had my dad not told me when I was in the corporate world, when I was debating, I wanted to teach tennis full time, he said, if you go out on your own and it doesn't work, when you go back to the corporate scene, people will respect you. And then he also said that one of the greatest things he ever told me, he said, isn't that what makes life exciting? Something scary. I was like, smokes, man, that was great. Um, all right. So with the positive, you've got, we've got all of us have crappy high school experiences or, as youth sports, but is there any one defining negative sports or growing up moment that helped you later in life?
I played football as well. And I played football in junior high, and then into high school. And I was on the offensive line, and I was told that I had a chance to go Division 3, that I could have gone Division 3, probably as a walk-on. Division 3 didn't have scholarships back then, but so I had a chance to possibly do that. I got my finger caught in a guy's face mask, and it shattered everything in my pinky finger. Okay. So had to have, surgery, had to have pins put in. It ended my season 4 games into like a 12-game season. The only, and then, it was never the same after that. So sometimes I'll think back to that. Usually when it gets colder and my finger hurts now in my 50s from that because I got metal plates in there. But I'm like, maybe I could have just taped it up and stuck it out, because I see a lot of people playing through a lot of injuries, and pain is temporary and then memories are a lifetime. So that's my only regret, is maybe I could have been a little bit more tougher with the pain threshold back then. But I was never going to play in the NFL or get a college scholarship. But it's one of those things that you still think about. You're like, maybe I could have done that, a little differently. Maybe I wasn't as tough as I should have been. Uh, yeah, a pinky finger took down my football career.
Well, I want to jump to your comedic life, if I can call it that chapter. And you've answered some of these questions I had about. I was curious, how you write your material, but do you consciously sit down at some point every day, or does it? Hey, I'm at a bar and I hear something, I write it down on a napkin. Do you consciously try to write jokes every day, or is it more about the stories?
So I'm not a writer. There are people that are. Everyone will come up with a different way to do it. I'm not a writer. I can't sit down and do it. My brain is working around the clock. Um, I'm always trying to think about how I can make something funny. It's on my YouTube thing. If you're from Florida or if you know about the snowbird situation, you'll like the clip. It's 3 minutes. It won a comedy festival on that 3-minute clip. I pull up at a red light. I'm behind 2 cars. This is in Naples, Florida. One has Ontario license plates. They're from Canada. Huge car, 2 people in it. Off to the right, it's a Ford pickup truck. It's got about 20 people. It's got a whole bunch of people up front and a whole bunch of people in the back. It's construction workers, day laborers type. And I'm sitting there going, 2 completely different cultures have come together at this stoplight at the same point in time. 2 completely different things. And I'm sitting there going, because a lot of comedy is about compare and contrast. And I've worked harder on that bit to make it not offensive, because you think that I'm making fun of Canadian drivers and then Mexican drivers, but it's not about that at all. It's a funny bit. It's on my YouTube thing, but it's just sitting at a red light behind 2 cars. And now it's a 3-minute bit that gets tons of laughs in Florida. I can't do it outside of Florida, but
Right.
it gets tons of laughs in Florida. And it's just from sitting there. But yeah, if I'm out at a bar or something, and that, my Surfer on Acid, that's from a bar. I went up and started talking to a girl, and the bit, the joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if somebody laughs at something that I say off the cuff, then that registers something in my brain. And then I'm like, okay, how can I expand on that? And so a lot of my signature bits are things that are pretty unique. And but they've all come from real life experiences. It's not 100% the way it happened, but it's
Right.
based on, real life. But I cannot sit down. I can't sit down and go, "Oh, okay, I'm going to write jokes
Right.
today."
Right. Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
doesn't happen.
Like
And when,
songwriters. Got it.
yeah, I mean, and then sometimes I'm like, okay, especially now that I'm headlining, you're like, okay, I got 45 minutes, but this guy wants 55. What can I do? And then I got to go back through my life. And so I'm pulling stuff that happened to me 15, 20 years ago, and I'm pulling it into my current stand up act. It's insane. So,
Well, I'll give you one. I always thought this was funny, and it might bomb. I don't care. When people are talking to you and like saying goodbye, it's like could be on the phone or talking to a friend in person. They have a good one. Some comedian ought to take that and run with this. Like, what do you mean have a good one? Like it's like if somebody ever said, "Hey, have a good two." Does he want me to go take a good dump? What's a number two? What's a good one? I always thought, what
mhm.
do you mean? Well, have a good one.
I got a similar thing. So a lot of times, so the other thing is, after a show, some comedians will go backstage. They don't want anything to do with the audience. I'm not that guy. I will stand by the door. I will say hi to anyone who wants to say hi after a show, good or bad. And some nights it's tough because they'll walk by you. They will not make eye contact. Other nights they'll come up to you and tell you that you're the greatest thing in the world. But this is kind of like what you're talking about. A common theme is they will say, if they liked you, they'll go, "You're funny as," and then they're going to use a different word, right? So they could say, "You're funny as SHIT," right? And I'm like, okay, well, all right, is that a compliment?
Yeah, right.
I've heard, I've heard you're funny as the F word. And I'm like, is that a compliment? So I just think it's interesting. They could just say you're funny, you're hilarious, but they have to compare it to something that I don't know why we've equated those words to being an elevated form of funny. So that's
Excellence.
interesting for me. But they're like, "You're as funny as," and I'm like,
Okay.
"Okay, what
Yeah.
does that mean?" So I don't know. That's an interesting thing.
Now,
But
you
my
li-
my
go ahead.
my greatest my inside, and this happened like a couple nights ago. Guy comes, they always want to tell you their joke, right? That's what you just did, right? They always want to tell you your joke.
I don't
And
have any
then
more. I'm done.
and then they'll say, "You can use that in your act." And I'm like, there's no way in the world any comedian has ever used anything told to them in their act. None. Right. And I'll be like, yeah, but I might stick with my own stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I was like,
Well,
we do have an open mic. You can go up and tell that joke if you want.
I was going to ask you this later on, but I'll ask it now. It's like, okay, when somebody meets you, oh, you're a comedian. Well, give me a joke. Does that happen to you a lot?
Yeah, it's the number one pet peeve. So, um, you know, I mentioned I'm divorced. I, 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 I like the other thing is they think when you're a comedian, they think that you're on 24/7
Right.
and you're just not. There's no way you can live your life like that. Most people, when they meet me in real life and then find out I'm a comedian, they're like, "What? You?" Because I'm completely different on stage than I am off stage. So I'm a lot more animated, on stage. Life of the party type person, but off stage, I'm very quiet, very reserved. So I do have this little sports bar that I like to go to across the street from where I live. I'll probably go there in a little bit. It's karaoke night. And but when people now that I'm doing stuff, people will recognize me every now and then, and or people will be told, "Hey, he's a comedian," and they're like, especially if they've had a few drinks in them, they're like, "Tell me a joke," and I just like I can't do it. I just can't unless she's really, really cute. And then she's going to get my whole entire 45-minute act. But if it's a guy coming up to me, he's not going to get any of my material. I have been known to make exceptions if they're attractive. But
Right.
But yeah, that's tough. But I'll always say, hey, you can come see me. I'll be at the Snappers Comedy Club, Fort Myers, Florida, Wednesday, February 11th. I'm headlining. You're more than welcome to come. You'll hear the whole entire hour.
Yeah.
So
You ever tell that
yeah,
guy, say, "Hey, buy me a few beers and my meal, and I'll give you a couple jokes"?
yeah. Or they'll just tell you their jokes. They'll
Yeah.
tell you. The other thing is, they're like, oh, you're a comedian. What's your favorite comedian? And then I'll say, and then they'll tell me their favorite comedians, and then they'll tell me all their favorite comedians' jokes. And so I'm like, okay, so
Yeah. Just
we're
let
having
me
a great conversation.
let me take my meal to go, right? So now you mentioned comedians. Is there a particular comedian that you kind of modeled your technique from, or delivery, or you researched somebody or that you liked?
Yeah. So when I was in my 20s and I was old enough to start going to comedy clubs, I was living in the Washington, D.C. area. I went to the D.C. Improv a lot. And my favorite comedian, even to this day, is Brian Regan. So Brian Regan, not a household name, but comedians know who he is. You can also find him on Netflix and YouTube. And Brian Regan is classified as a clean comedian. He doesn't swear. And especially in Florida, if you're a clean comedian, well, this is anywhere. If you're a clean comedian, don't swear, you're going to make a lot more money than those that do, because there's people that will pay a lot of money for you to show up at their event and not swear. Um, I do not swear. However, I do talk a lot about sex and relationships and things like that. I just paint the picture without using the bad words. So I'm actually billed by the Comedy Zone Network as our dirtiest clean comedian. So it's kind of funny for me because they think I'm a clean comedian because I don't say the F word or swear, but yet my whole entire act is about sex and relationship humor. So that's an inside joke for me. I'm like, they think I'm clean. I just did a whole entire 4 minutes about a sex act,
Right.
but I didn't say the words. So it's a technique. It's like what we were talking about before. It's working harder. No, it's working smarter, not harder. So or something like.
Now, when you have your act ready, or how does one practice? Do you practice in front of the mirror? You videotape yourself?
And not in the mirror. I don't like how I look. I don't even like looking at myself on this. However, um, it is out loud in my car. And so I'm so happy now that talking to yourself in the car now is socially acceptable, because they just think that you got a Bluetooth in your ear. And I don't have a Bluetooth in the ear. I'm just talking it out loud. And before Bluetooth, they would just think that I'm crazy talking to myself in the car. Also, when I'm headlining a show, I will do a dry run out loud 3 times during that day, either in my hotel room that I'm at or in my apartment. Never, for me, this is just my style. I never want to say something on stage for the first time out loud, because it's a lot about cadence, it's all about delivery. It's about inflection in your voice. So it's probably, like in tennis, like you're not going to start a game without taking some reps or serves. It's the same type of thing for me. And I can tell those that show up unprepared, but that's why some are amateurs and some are professionals. It's how you view yourself. But on show days, people in my life know, like, do not call me, do not text me. I'm in a mental zone. It starts around 2 o'clock in the afternoon and it ends 5 seconds after I get off stage. So
Like any successful person, you're prepared. That's great to hear. That's a lot to hear yourself. That's what, almost 2 hours of talk, but you feel confident by the time you get there. I remember that you would post on Facebook, I'm here, 5 minutes to show time, and it show the marquee or whatever. It's like time to be funny. And it hit me. I was like, man, what the heck does he do? It's like, okay, what if he's had a crappy day? What if someone's blown up your phone or whatever? You're in a bad mood. It's like, how do you get yourself in that state? Like, from an athlete, you could understand the preparation, stretching, doing all this stuff. But okay, you're in a bad mood. Other things in the world pissed you off or whatever. Now it's like time to be funny. I mean,
mhm.
what do you do?
Yeah. So I mean, I've had bad shows, and the bad shows that I've had is all been contributed to that when I let out outside distractions. 6 years ago, I was dating this lady, and for some strange reason, whenever the day I was having a show, she always wanted to text me at 6:45 when I'm going on stage at 7 to tell me about some girl at work that pissed her off, right? And it was all urgent, had to be dealt with at that moment. And so I had to block all that out. So yeah, when I get to a venue, and part of it's now superstition. So I do that type of post. It's twofold. Number one, comedy clubs are businesses. Like they're it's a business. It's usually a small business, and some comedians will promote the business and some don't. And obviously, they're going to want it's free advertising for them, right? So I'm going to let, you know, everyone know I'm at this comedy club. I'm doing a show, right? This is a business, right? This is a great comedy club. I'm happy to be here. I'll show a picture, of the club and where I'm at. And then I always say time to be funny. And that started, just on a post one night. And then but I had a great set that night. So then it was like, then I did it again and did it again. And so now it's like one of those things where it's doing two things. Number one, it's telling people that I'm at a show, I'm at work right now. It's also promoting the business that I'm at. But now it's a superstition thing for me. Because there's some nights where I get there late or whatever, and they're like, okay, you're up in 10 minutes. I'm like, oh man, I haven't made that post yet. I got to hurry up and go do that. Because now it's a mental thing. It's kind of like some people don't walk on the white lines, on a baseball field. It's kind of like that. So, but yeah, you're not the first person to be able to remember that. So the fact that you remember something that I'm doing is part of it as well. Like you want to be remembered.
Well, it's also that, speaking it into existence. Time to be funny. Me, go do it, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love it.
it's a motivation. It's like, all right, all right, I'm not my quiet reserved self now. Like now it's time to go on stage. I'm flipping into character mode.
When you look into the audience, I'm sure it probably happened early on. Is it intimidating at all? Or is it now good energy?
It's a good question. My first 4 years, I had real stage fright and anxiety. And I thought at the time that I could overcome that with some liquid courage. So I would have a couple beers before I go on stage. And I thought that that was helping my act. So one night I'm on a show with somebody and we're doing the whole weekend together. We're doing the 5 show weekend. And he's the headliner and he came up to me and he goes, I notice you drink before you go on stage. And I said, yeah. He goes, you think it helps you? And I go, I think so. And he goes, I'm going to tell you it doesn't, right? Because I've seen you, right? And especially on the nights that we do 2 shows, right? Your first show is better than your second. And then he goes, so are you a professional comedian? And I go, I like to think so. I'm being paid. He goes, well, do you have another job? And I go, yeah, I got a day job. And he goes, do you drink on that job? I said, no. And he goes, well, why are you drinking on this job? So I don't do it anymore. And I bring my first beer on stage for that joke, that the surfer on acid joke. And I take my first sip and only sip on stage. And it did help. It did help. And so his name is Rob Little, and he's a very well-known comedian. He's from Michigan, does a lot of cruise ships. That was some invaluable advice. And I didn't like to hear it at the time because
Sure.
he's basically saying, he's like, you're going up that you think what you're doing is helping you. It's not.
That's great.
And so that type of constructive criticism from someone that I respect has changed my career. And I've told them that too before. And I tell new comedians that too, like especially on open mics. They're like, "Oh, don't put me up first. I got to go have a few drinks." I'm like, "No, you don't. You don't have to have a few drinks. You
Right.
want to have a few drinks."
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's I guess the moral of that story is if you want to be a professional, you have to act like a professional. And as a professional, you don't drink on the job. You don't show up intoxicated. You show up to do the job. You got to be in a physical and mental mindset to do the job. So
So 5 shows, that's a nice 10 beer weekend you're missing out on, huh?
now
You're better off.
after the show is a totally different story, but before the show or during the show, definitely not.
Right, right. Okay, so you're up there performing and you look out and you see a pretty girl, very pretty girl. And that's might be intimidating, but do you ever go, that was a great joke. I wonder if that pretty girl's laughing. Do you ever do that?
Yeah, so there's a couple I have to find a single female in the audience. It's part of 3 different bits that I do, and sometimes it's hard to do that in Southwest Florida because it's an older demographic and it's all married couples. However, so usually I'm watching people walk in. I'm trying to find, like an attractive a female in the audience, but not because I want to date her. It's because I'm trying. It helps make the show funnier to have that. But I've only, and this sounds weird because I have a whole bit about stand-up comedy groupies, but I've only dated or gone out on a date with 2 people that I've met at a comedy show, and both have gone completely insane. So I've written off, I do not want to do that. However, everyone tells me, you're going to find your second wife. She's going to come to a show. She's going to connect with something that you say. And I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens. Hasn't happened yet. But no, every now and then, because they're drinking, right? They'll come up to you and like, hey, you want to hang out after the show? And I always say no. There's nothing good that is going to help my comedy career in this day and age of mixing,
Right.
personal stuff in a professional. It goes back to treating it as a job. So
Yeah. Scratch off, no chuckle bangers, right?
yeah.
Now
Well, you can't
that
say
was a
that
good
word.
one.
So chuckle banger is a word that I came up with. And so the word I'm not going to say the word, but it's the chuckle effort, and that's the word. And that's a word known in the industry for stand-up comedy groupies. And I'm doing a radio interview one morning. And so we're doing the radio show and the guy goes to a commercial and he says, hey, you ever get any of those? And he says the word. And I go, no. And he goes, "Oh, come on, all the comedians come in here every week. They tell me about all these girls they get." And I'm like, well, I don't, it'd be nice to know if they are one, and I haven't found one. So then I'm driving home from the radio interview and I'm thinking about, okay, that's a funny premise, right? Wouldn't it be nice to know who the groupies are? Right? Instead of trying to figure it out, wouldn't it be nice if they would just say that they're a stand-up comedy groupie in the beginning? But I can't say that word, so I have to change it. And so back in college, for that word, we always used the word bang for some reason. And so I changed the word to chuckle banger, and I start doing a bit where I'm like, and I do a bit. And then I ask the audience if we have any chuckle bangers in the audience. And the reason why I love the bit is because it's each show's different, right? So sometimes there's girls that will raise their hand, because they want to be part of the show. There's sometimes that you're going to get guys that raise their hand because they think it's funny. Or there's sometimes nobody's going to raise their hand. So I have to react to all those different situations. That makes every show different, which is fun for me because I've done that bit now for 8 years. And in some of them, some of the better ones I put on my YouTube page about how I've handled it. It's the number one thing that people come up to me. It's a word that no one else has heard. And I probably should have a trademark on that word. But that's a word that went on my merchandise, and my merchandise has tripled my income in stand-up comedy. It's from that word, and it's just because that guy asked me that question. I thought that word was funny. Let me switch it, and then I turn it now into a 3-minute bit. So,
Right.
that's how your brain works. As a comedian, you're always thinking, how can I make that situation funny?
Yeah. That's great. You're not relying on your talent of the four-seam fastball, it's your smarts. I love that.
Yeah.
There you
No,
go. What's the, biggest crowd you've ever performed in front of?
I think it was had to be the Piff the Magic Dragon show. So, Piff the Magic Dragon was on America's Got Talent, and he was a comedy magician. He does stand-up comedy. He does little magic tricks. He's got a dog, Mr. Piffles or something. He was big. This is probably 6, 7 years ago, and he's got a show at the Flamingo in Las Vegas. But during the summer, a lot of the Vegas performers would go out on tour. And so he came here to Southwest Florida and he needed an opener. And it was at this event center. It was, I think it was 400 people, maybe a little bit more. And I got to open with him. That was, that's probably my biggest crowd. But then again, comedy clubs, usually are going to seat about 100, 150. There's a couple that I do that are low 200s. The small theaters I do are usually 150 or so. Now, stand-up comedy has blown up since COVID, so a lot of the top comedians are out doing arenas and football stadiums and things like that. And I just don't think that's good for stand-up comedy. I think stand-up comedy is meant to be seen up close, intimate. I think the perfect crowd is usually around 125, 130, if that's all it seats. So no matter what it seats, you want it to be full. Laughter's contagious. There's a comedy club on Sanibel Island, Florida. It seats 55 people. It's one of the best rooms I've ever performed at ever. It's just something about it is magical. So, but then we have a hockey arena down the road, seats 8,000, and some of the big names will play that. Like Kevin Hart was there a couple weeks ago. And then I asked people, that went, I would go, how was it? And they're like, it wasn't that great. I'm like, well, yeah, you were 400 yards away from where he was. You couldn't see any of your facial
Yeah.
reaction. A lot of comedy is nonverbal and you just don't see it. I'd rather have them in a comedy club, sitting up front, packed in, and laughter's contagious. And it helps because I'm very animated. I'm a big guy. So I use that in my act. I sweat a lot when I'm on stage. That's part of my act. And if you're sitting in row triple Z of the 500 section, you're not going to pick up any of that. So,
Yeah.
but to answer your question, 400, uh, you know, as many things in life, bigger is not always better.
Right. Well, I'll tell everybody listening right now to I'll plug your YouTube channel. I've seen your bit and you have a connection with the audience. I feel like this guy's talking to me. He's not somebody just throwing out zingers just to get, cheap laughs, I guess. Couple of things, little rapid fire to wrap up some four seam fastballs for you to hit. I'm wearing this. I was going to wear a sleek pirate shirt. Joe Boo needs a refill. One of my tennis buddies, we were together recently. He bought it for our tennis team. We used to have a shot glass, and whoever got hit by the ball the most would have to take the shot. Anyway, it's kind of infamous here in Atlanta about our team. But anyway, I'm wearing this, and my daughter and her boyfriend about 2 weeks ago said, "What's up with that shirt?" I said, "Did you ever see the movie Major League?" And they're like, "No." And this generation's not even seen the movie Major League. What a great baseball movie! It's hilarious, right? I tried to give it a little bit, but that's a long question here. Wrap that up with what is your favorite comedic movie?
Me boy, Tommy Boy. I'm a huge Chris Farley fan. I'm lucky enough, unfortunately, Chris passed away very early, 33 years old. His brother, Kevin Farley, lives in the next town over. I've done shows with Kevin Farley. We went on the road a couple years ago, and I drove, and we did a bunch of shows up in the St. Augustine, Florida area. I had 3 hours in the car with him, and it's just tough because he probably wants to sleep. I want to talk about Chris Farley. I want to talk about Tommy Boy. He was in the movie Tommy Boy as well. And you just don't know what the protocol or what the etiquette is because this is someone's brother who's passed away.
Right.
So, and of course, we're supposed to be colleagues on a business trip, and I'm, geeking out over the fact that I got Chris Farley's brother in my car. Um, we did talk, and he told me a lot of stories over the course of the weekend. And some of the things that happened on the set of Tommy Boy is just outrageous to hear his perspective of it. I think the movie's brilliant. I think it's the only movie I've ever gone to twice in the same day. I went to see it. I laughed so hard. We stayed in the theater and saw it again. It's the only movie that when I'm flipping through the channels, if it's being shown, I will stop and I will watch it. My college buddies and I quote that movie every day to this day. So if you've not seen Tommy Boy for some strange reason, you need to see this movie. It is hilarious. I also like Caddyshack. I also like the European Vacations. I like the Chevy Chase. I always like Chevy Chase. But funniest movie of all time, definitely Tommy Boy.
That's cool. Yeah, and I have to agree with all those. They you know, what do they call them? Remote drops. Is there a your funniest book you've ever read? Is there a funny book that people could check out?
I don't Somebody gave me Steve Martin's book uh as a gift. Steve Martin wrote a book about stand-up comedy. Steve Martin was hilarious stand-up comedian back in the day, like hilarious. He's also Eddie Murphy did as well. They burned out real early because stand-up comedy can, it can take a toll on you mentally. And so Steve Martin is known for he always says, I'd keep doing stand-up comedy if it wasn't for the Friday late show. And every comedian knows what that means. And so a lot of times when you do comedy clubs, there's an early show and there's a late show. Early show, you know, let's say you go out and they're just coming off dinner or they're having dinner and they're out 7:30, and it's a great show. And then they tell you how great you are at the meet and greet after the show. And now you got to come down off that high for about 45 minutes while the second show gets, going. And the second show audience is never as good as the first show. Very, very rare. They are either more tired, they're more drunk because they've been drinking, or they're just a younger, more rambunctious crowd. It is extremely rare. Every comedian would love it though, because it's the last show of the weekend for a late show to be better than the first show. So, Steve, I have the book. I have not read it, but I know he talks about it in there. I should probably go read it. I've kind of gotten into the TikTok world, where everything's quick, 15, 30-second things. I'm not really a reader. I don't have the attention span for that, but I should do it more.
Oh, that's all right. All right. So, out of the comedic realm, who's your favorite all-time athlete? It can't be Aaron Lober.
So for the Pittsburgh Pirates, I wear number 24. It's for Barry Bonds. Uh, he was the best hitter that I've ever seen in my lifetime. Not the nicest guy in the world. And we've heard the stories about that at the Pittsburgh Pirates fantasy camp. So that's kind of taken edge off it because I think he's the greatest baseball player that's ever played, but he is not the greatest teammate that's ever been on a team. And I think as I get older, I'd rather have a better teammate than the greatest athlete of all time on my team. Now, in the modern day area, Paul Skeens is just an incredible pitcher and an incredibly nice guy. And from what I've heard so far, an incredibly great teammate. So right now, I'm a huge Paul Skeens fan.
I gotta agree with that from everything I've heard. And his work ethic is awesome. So I want to be considerate of your time, and I know you got trivia was 2 nights ago, but you might have to go sign autographs at the sports bar. But a couple notes that I took down. One thing I love, and I'm going to let you close out with what you told me earlier. I think is just amazing. you took your shot, man. I got huge respect for you to take that shot just to even, your so-called failure after your first time. And I love what the guy said. Hey, it's your first time. You didn't do bad. It was your first time. I think everybody should learn from that no matter what you do. Talked about no regrets in your next chapter. And this is really, I thought this was awesome that you said joy, the real joy for you is seeing other people laugh. We think that the comedian's getting off on look at the people laughing at me, but you made them laugh. And I think that's everybody's job is to make someone's day, everybody's day better somehow. So that's really big. You do have amazing relatability because I've seen your act. I loved how you said that you turn a negative into comedy, and you can't watch the news but 3 seconds or social media sometimes and feel bad because we're just inundated. I love how you turn that. Would you say pain is temporary, but memories are a lifetime?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you've taken some hits, and I like the way you're persistent, and the way you face adversity is inspiring. Johnny C, I know people can follow you on YouTube. Is there any other place that they can follow you, or is there some comedy site that can track you?
It's Johnny C Comedian. It's on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and then YouTube as well. So I don't post a lot of clips on YouTube because I haven't filmed my first special yet. Oh, anything that you post on YouTube cannot be like I can't post something on YouTube and then it's going to be in a Netflix special because Netflix would want exclusive it to be seen for the first time on Netflix. So I got to be very careful with what I post online, but I do have some of my signature bits on there. And then, I do all the clubs in Florida. My home club is in Fort Myers, Florida. I do a lot in the Tampa area, but yeah, I mean, it's good to be on here. The thing that I want people to take from seeing my show is not only do I want them to laugh, but I also want them to understand that kind of like what we just talked about. I end my show by saying that I always say, I didn't do my first open mic until I was 45, even though I wanted to do it since I was a kid. So you're never too old to do what you want to do with your life and don't ever give up. I actually battled some severe depression after my divorce. And then I said, chase your dreams. And I'm still chasing that dream. I still have goals and things that I want to do. I'm just getting started, even though I've been doing this 9, 10 years in stand-up comedy world, that's basically starting off. So hopefully I get to perform in more clubs across the country. Hopefully I'll get that Netflix special and I can tell this message, to the world. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep working to get to that point. I'm not going to give up. And I don't want other people to give up on whatever their passion is. You get one life and it's short and it goes by quickly. And, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to have our failures. We're all going to bomb and that happens to all of us. But don't give up, and it's also good to celebrate the things that you accomplish in life. So when I got a chance to headline my first comedy club, I went out and celebrated. That was a great accomplishment. When I did my first headline, my first theater this past summer up in Delaware, I went out and celebrated afterwards. So, but Rob, will end on that note.
That's excellent,
We're
man.
right at 1 hour. No
There
one's
you
going
go.
to watch this whole thing for an hour. Do you
Yeah,
really
man.
think people are going to watch this for an hour?
They're gonna repeat it, man. I hope so, but they're missing out if they don't, man. You've thrown out some great nuggets, and I appreciate your attitude and your insights again, man. So check out Johnny C on YouTube. And before we close out, make sure that you push the subscription button and notification bell and send this episode as well as the other ones so that your friends could be inspired too. So Johnny C, appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Rob. Good luck
Until
with everything.
there you go. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Till next time, make the most of your time and hang tough.